So I am so lucky and so grateful to have the most beautiful character, in my opinion, on Indian Matchmaker season 2, and this is Shital Patel. The reason why I say that is because she showed so much character, so much perseverance, and so much beauty while she was going through the dating process. And I think these are attributes that make a beautiful relationship. And this is why I'm so excited to have Shital on right now. And I know you've been doing so many wonderful things, Shital. How is life for you?
So life has been honestly a whirlwind since the show came out, but I will tell you I've gotten mostly positive reactions, which I think of course you're going to have a few negative comments here and there. It's reality TV, but the positive feedback that I've gotten from and it's mainly women that said that my story was inspirational and it's given them hope to keep going. And I feel like for me, of course it's been amazing. I'm in a serious relationship and I'm so happy, but I feel like to be able to take my story and help people is probably the best part so far of the whole experience.
Wow, incredible. And that really shines from you, actually. I see a lot of the work that you're putting out on podcasts and also awareness about relationships. So really, I wanted to go a little bit into my forte as well of like understanding patterns and things that push relationships away and things that really help relationships come together. Because similarly, I went through a lot of pain in order for me to be able to help people with love. And I can see that you're inspiring people through your own journey and what you've been through. So I guess a key question would be, talk me through what are the biggest changes from being single to actually being in a committed relationship?
So I mean there have been a lot of changes, but I will tell you, so on the show we talk about, how I did a lot of work with the mindset coach. And so prior to my relationship with Neeraj is a very secure, evolved, loving individual. And prior to my relationship with him, I was always attracting men that were inconsistent. I was dating in New York, so it's, a completely different beast to
Yes.
date in New York. You come across a lot of people that will, there's like those buzzwords, but it's like they'll ghost you, and
Yes.
there's a lot of negative behavior that I was accepting just because my confidence wasn't at a point, where I felt like I was worthy of the love that I deserved. So when I started working with the mindset coach, we spent a lot of time trying to build up my confidence and then figure out, whether it was past traumas or whatever childhood issues led to me sort of being okay with this bad behavior, from a lot of these men that I was dating. And so once we figured that out and built up my confidence, then slowly, I started to attract men that were more in alignment with, what I felt that I deserved. And then ultimately I found the one, which is Neeraj. But I think the biggest thing is, you do all of this work on yourself and it's so important, but actually putting that into practice in a, in a real relationship, that's a much different story. And it's for me, I've learned that the work for me will never stop. So
Yes.
I will have to continue to, work on my confidence, make sure that I can self-regulate my emotions, and then also be able to manage my triggers. And Neeraj is great; like he's there with me. But a lot of these things they're always going to be work for me.
Wow, so much wisdom in what you just said there. And we can almost see where this podcast is going. And 100% you're right. Because when we're tolerating a behavior from somebody, we can all find relationships at a certain level. Like if you're allowing somebody to mistreat you, you can still be in a relationship. However, you know what you should be getting within a relationship. When you know what you tolerate, you know what you accept, and you have to raise your standard. And that standard comes from within. And that's exactly what you did. When you raise your self-esteem, when you raise what you're going to tolerate, then you're actually aligned to a partner that's going to treat you the way that you want to be treated. And that's what I actually love because guiding people through that is such an important place and understanding how you can become more, how you can actually raise your own self-esteem. And that doesn't mean that you go out and buy Prada. It could do for some people, but it doesn't really matter because it's the inside that does.
Absolutely,
What is the
absolutely.
key stage for you to change your beliefs and your worthiness?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we did with the mindset coach, I realized that I was placing a lot of value on external things. So whether it was like, oh, am I, I was a bit of a people pleaser. So I was like, if my group of friends liked me or if I had a lot of friends, and a lot of times in New York it was quantity over quality.
Yeah.
I would take it, it was all borrowed confidence because it was external, so I call it borrowed confidence. So it would be borrowed from what people thought of me, or what outfit I was wearing, or like when I was younger I struggled with my weight, and then I and got into fitness, so it was like what did the weight say on the scale, things like that. I would just use those external things to validate myself. And then the big thing that I used was men. So it was like if I was getting attention from a guy, even if it was the wrong guy, I somehow felt like I was a little more worthy,
Yes.
and so those were the patterns that we really broke down. And I realized that it doesn't, when I'm creative and when I'm creating something that I'm passionate about, that's where my real value comes from. And that's, like when I'm fulfilled in my passion, that builds my confidence because I'm actually putting out something. And so I started to just focus more on that. I remember around that time I started doing a fashion page on Instagram, and I just got really creative, and I realized that that's where my true value comes from, is doing the things that I love, and no one can take that away from me. That's not borrowed confidence. So I'm not confident every day, but I think overall I'm in a much more confident place than I was 2 years ago because of that.
And that must be so inspiring to hear for other women as well. Because when you look at you, you think, wow, this woman's so well put together. She is so brilliant in many ways. So, like somebody that might be going through a struggle, they might be thinking, oh, it must be easy for you. But for you to share that vulnerability is really key. In NLP, we call that something called rules. Okay. When you have rules around what makes you happy? What makes me feel confident? And if it's my friends messaging me, that makes me feel confident, or my friends telling me I look beautiful, that makes me feel confident. This is all borrowed, as you said. However,
Yep.
when you say, when I work on my fashion or I work on my passion, that is what's going to make me feel confident every day. Then, if you do one action towards your goal, you're going to feel confident. And that's an internal barrier and strength that you can take on and everyone else can take on. As soon as we take the power away from how we feel outside compared to who we are inside, that's when it all shifts.
Yeah, it really, as cliche as it sounds, like it really is about the inner journey and the inner work. And so if you can get to a place where you're good and you have that internal peace, I mean, I'm an perfect example. No one can take that away.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So I hear this all the time, especially within our culture, because I work with mainly Indians, and they're always getting family pressure. Always, 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 always. Did you ever deal with that? And how did you overcome that?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Edison, New Jersey, which is a very Indian. There's a huge Indian population. So I grew up around all like Indian aunties. My grandparents lived with me. We had tons of family around. So really, from a young age, there was a extremely big importance placed on getting married. So we kind of had that drilled into our heads. So I have two sisters, so the three of us. My grandmother would always tell us like you're in her own way, she would say that our value is tied to getting married,
Yes.
and so there was a lot of pressure. And I was always sort of the black sheep of the family. So I didn't follow a traditional path. I'm, almost 40, I'm not married. Both my sisters got married in their 20s. So they sort of did like the quote unquote
Yeah.
right thing according to my family. But I think the way that I dealt with that, and it was really tough, especially during their weddings, because a lot of family members did make me feel like there was something wrong with me, or that I would end up alone. I mean, some pretty harsh things,
Yes.
that I had to deal with. But I realized that if the sooner that I was able to draw boundaries and verbalize that, I'm on my own path, and it's again easier said than done. It took
Yeah.
a while to sort of chip away at them, and then finally get them to back off and understand my perspective. And some of them still don't understand, right? But I think the important thing is to, where you can, just draw boundaries with them. And sometimes, I wouldn't attend family events because if it affected my mental health, or I felt like, I was going into a situation that was toxic for me, I told my parents, like, look, I'm not going to attend X event, or this person's wedding, or whatever it is, if I was in a state where I knew I couldn't handle the comments.
100%. Yeah. And you touch on so many good things there, boundaries, and also like how to handle it with your Family. There's one client of mine and she had a family wedding coming up recently. She's 36, 37. And she was like, Sonny, I am dreading it. Like, oh my God, the
Yeah.
questions, my mum's look when people ask me this question. And I
Uh-huh.
goes to her, you know what? Do you trust in the universe? Because I'm big like manifester, law of attraction.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
you're the
Yeah.
same, right? And I'm like, do you trust in the universe? I was like, so when do you want to get married? And she goes, March. I was like, March? Okay. I was like, what year? She was like, it was this year. I
Uh-huh.
was like, wow, okay. So I was like, when your family ask, what are you gonna say? And she goes, March 2022. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna trust the universe. So auntie asked her this last year, and she goes, March 22, I'm getting married. And they're like, why? Have you got a man? Are you engaged? It's like, no, it's happening. Beautifully, she got married in April this
Oh,
year. So
dang. Oh my gosh. And I'm sure
yeah.
a lot of that was thanks to your help. So that's really incredible.
Well,
Wow.
being coaching, it's almost my help, but also it's all you, right? Because it's as much as a person can do. And like you did, you took on so much of it. Because what is so important is instead of just sitting back and saying, oh, I can't find love. There's no good people in New York. They're all like ghosting people. Oh, the culture's really
Your
bad.
limiting beliefs.
Yes, and probably instead of sticking and believing their beliefs, you went, forget this, I'm taking action. I'm changing my path. I'm changing something to do something. On that note, though, what was the biggest shift for you? Was there any of these days that you were like, "Ah, I don't think I'm going to find my partner?
Oh
And
yeah.
what? Oh yeah,
I was like, because I'm thinking back now, because time goes so quickly,
yes.
and then you forget. So I like to remind myself. That's why I write a lot because I'll forget otherwise. But I like to remind myself of where. Sorry, I just wanted to turn off there's a noise.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just wanted to, so I like to remind myself of where I came from, and there were many days because when you're manifesting, you hold on to the belief and you're holding on to the hope and you're taking the inspired actions, but you're not going to get what you want in the time that you want. The when you can't control that, so
Yes.
you have to persist until you know that this is fact, it's going to happen. So in that persist phase, many days where I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this, or will I end up alone? I mean, your ego comes up with a lot of
Yeah.
things. You
Oh,
know,
battles
your
you.
yeah, your ego will come in there and say a lot of nasty things to you, and so it's like you're gonna die alone, and just like crazy, crazy things. And then, I have my sisters, and I have a small circle of women that are really close to me, and so whenever I felt that way, I would just reach out to them, and they would remind me that, look, there's like billions of people in the world. You're gonna be okay.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Bring the focus back to yourself. And so I really leaned on my network whenever I had those sorts of feelings. But even with all of the network and the coaching and everything, you can sit in the negativity for a little bit, but you have to find a way to bring yourself back.
So well said. Because when you are sitting in the negativity, like it's like if you ever wake up and you hurt yourself in the morning and you start having a negative day, then it's a roll-on effect of negative, negative, negative. But then you
Yes.
have to let go of that negative feeling, almost start feeling that feeling of love again. And it sounds like your network of friends and sisters and family are there for you. So you felt that love, which makes it so easy to attract love. Because when we're without love, it's like everything's negative. You can't find the positive in anything. When you
Right.
bring it in, it comes in so well. So, what are your opinions on freezing eggs? Like, I have this conversation with women, and within our culture, I don't feel like it's discussed enough, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
What is
It's
something you feel?
they feel that it's not discussed enough.
Yeah, I don't feel it is. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. So it's interesting because a lot of my South Asian friends have frozen their eggs. And to me, it really does give you insurance, right? Because it's like we don't you of course you're going to believe that you want to, you're going to meet someone, but like I said, we can't control the when.
Yes.
And it's just a fact that as women, we do have a biological clock. And I think, if or even if you're on the fence and you feel like, okay, you may want kids, you may not want kids, which either way is totally fine. but why not give yourself, that option at least? And I think that once you do that, once you freeze your eggs, you won't really operate out of a place of fear and desperation, because I have friends that haven't done it, and then they're like, oh my gosh, time is running out. I want to have 3 kids and I don't know when I'm going to meet the one. But I think that if they invested in themselves and took the step to freeze their eggs, then at that point it's that time pressure is not there as much.
Yeah, it's so good to have that investment of time where you can put something away, you can not be desperate, not have fear around relationships, and really just start enjoying it again. And
Yeah.
I really love the way you said that, because the minute you take away the fear, the minute you start taking all that desperation away, you start actually coming from a better place. You start
Yeah.
enjoying relationships, you start enjoying life, love, instead of going in there. So I do these Indian singles nights, right, in the UK. They're really cool.
I
And
saw one of your posts, and I think please bring that to the US, because I feel like so many people would find value in that. It's phenomenal.
well, that was actually going to be my question. If you want to co-host one with me at one point, right?
Love to do that, because I know when I was single, I would have loved to, had an event where it was specifically, because like in New York, they'll have
Yes.
events which they call quote unquote networking events, but they are underneath it, it's a singles event, but you don't really know what it is. So you have people show up, but they're like, they don't know if they can talk to someone else or if it is purely for network. There was a lot of confusion.
Yes.
And like if you have an event that is strictly for singles, it's a safe space. Everyone's welcome, you feel comfortable. I mean, I feel like you could meet a lot of people that way.
I would have loved to have had that exactly the way you just explained it. Same thing for me, right? Feel like we're connected somehow, because that's exactly it. I set these up with the vision that if I was single, I would have loved to have went to this where you can talk to somebody. And also one time there was a guy that was married and we had to be like, you have to leave.
That's
Like,
great. Yes, no, people that are attached, they're not allowed.
yeah, sorry, get out of here, right? We're gonna Facebook check you, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you got somebody. But I was gonna say there was a woman that came to one of these events, and as she came, she goes so specifically looking for somebody to have kids with straight away. And you could just imagine the energy she came in with. She looked very nice, very beautiful, worked out everything in that way. However, when she was there, she'll talk to a guy, and straight away she'll be going, "Do you want to have kids?" And guys are like, what the hell are you on about? We just met each other. How can I want to have kids with you? Like, you psycho. But unfortunately, it was so sad for her because she didn't take the right measures, like you said. She was still living in that desperation as such.
Yes.
And it was so sad. Yeah.
It is sad. And the other thing is, let's say, you didn't freeze your eggs and you want to, it like this situation of this woman, she gets attached, she gets into a relationship. A lot of times that creates just this like crazy pressure on the relationship. So it's like, okay, you're getting to know someone, the first few months are like, let me see if I actually, want to be with this person. Do we align? Can we live together? All of those things. And then on top of that, you're adding in the pressure of, oh my gosh, like time is running out.
Yes.
And then sometimes you make, a decision that you might not make if you had that insurance.
And that's it, actually. You get stuck on the outcome of where this relationship could go. And then whenever red flags start coming up after the 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you're like, I'm so stuck on the outcome that I want this child, I want this marriage. And when I work with some married couples, this is actually what happens with them. They were like, oh, I did it because I thought it was going to have kids or this was going to happen. Has that ever happened to you in a previous relationship?
Yeah, that's why I'm speaking from experience. So my last relationship, I felt like I was choking the relationship, because I hadn't, frozen my eggs, and I was at an age where I was like, I really felt like time was running out, and crazy me thought I can somehow control time, but I can't. And so I put a lot of pressure on the other person, and we really didn't get a chance to enjoy each other and, figure out if it was going to work. It's just, there was just so much anxiety and pressure, and it just eroded the relationship because of that.
Oh, so beautifully said. And you're speaking to such a big crowd there. I want to maybe ask you to give your younger self, that younger woman, 3 tips to get from where you are now to where you were.
Okay, so this is my biggest thing, and I don't, I think I would tell this to myself, like I tell this to myself now even as well, but I would say living in the moment and really it's so easy to think about the past or this future, right? And I'm not saying don't plan for the future, of course, like, you know, we have goals and things that we want to get done, but I spent a lot of time focusing on what is going to happen. So am I going to find someone? Am I going to have a family? Like, I lived in that state of fear a lot. So I would tell my younger self, and I practice this a lot more now, but to just live in the moment.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do, think about things moment to moment, if at all possible. The other thing I would tell myself is just be really curious, because I think, at least from my experience, you know, with dating, I would judge people very quickly.
Yeah.
And, you know, if something was unpleasant or I didn't like something, I would just label it as a red flag. I know we use that a lot. And there are obvious red flags, I get that. But I think that if I, you know, if I approached it with a little more curiosity, and maybe if I thought something was a red flag, try to ask some questions around that to see, you know, maybe it was coming from like a childhood issue, or maybe it was they
Yes.
were just having a bad day or whatever it was, right? And so maybe that red flag may have turned into a yellow flag or a green flag, you know? So
Yeah.
I would say just be really, really curious. And then the last thing, which is so important, I felt like, and my boyfriend likes to use this term, but we try to live with our mask off. So, you know, and you, there are many different ways to say that, but it's bringing your authentic self to any situation, not just dating, but any situation. And I felt like with dating specifically, you know, I did change myself, and I changed things about myself to kind of cater to the other person. And eventually, you know, the truth comes out. And I think that the more vulnerable you can be and take that mask off and, you know, be authentic, I think you have more of a chance of having a deep, meaningful relationship.
Ah, that's so beautiful. And them tips are so powerful. It really, really is. Taking off the mask is such a big thing. And it's so hard when you're living in normal life. Like when you're in
Yeah.
meditation world and you're in yoga, you're like, oh, I'm all authentic, I'm all fine. But when you
Yeah.
actually live in day to day and sometimes things get tough, it's one of the most difficult things. And I know you started this podcast with me today saying, you know, things aren't always like how it is when you're doing coaching. When you're in a relationship, it's a different scenario. I think that's it. The minute the relationship's hit with fear, the minute the relationship's hit with something, that mask is trying to come on. That mask is saying, let me come defend you. You know, I've been doing it so many years. Let me do it right now for you. Let me help you in this situation. And it's recognizing, actually, this isn't the real me, or this is almost a defensive side of me that's trying to protect me. However, the authentic side of me inside needs to come out to create this beautiful relationship.
Absolutely. That's perfect. I want to bottle that up and say that every day to remind myself. But it's a coping mechanism. I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean, that is it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah. And you know, for so many years, this coping mechanism is just trying to help us. And then we forget that sometimes, like this ego, this mask, it is trying to help us and protect us. But when we can really get comfortable with it, they call it some shadow work, they call it different things. When we really get comfortable with that other side of us, then we can let it go. We can almost accept it and give it that love that we both need. And all of us needs in total. You know, honestly, Shito, you are such an inspirational woman. I mean, you
Inspirational man.
inspirational man. I hope so. Honestly, you're enlightening so many people. And I'm so grateful to have you on, first of all. And secondly, I'm so grateful to be running the event with you in the US.
Yes, let's do it. I think, I mean, New York would be a great place if you wanted to start there, but I think New York would be amazing. I think the turnout would be huge, and hopefully we can make some love matches. That's the whole goal.
Yes, 100%. So we have this really cool matching system, which I'll talk to you about separately, and it will make magic happen for long-term success. Okay. So maybe we could pencil something in for the new year,
Yes,
and that'd be
I
an
would
amazing thing to do.
do that.
Is there any final words that you have for anyone, or and are you going to be appearing on Indian Matchmaker season 3? What's going on there?
Yeah, yeah. So my story will continue in season 3. So you guys will get to see
Yes.
the continuation of Neeraj and I's story. We're still together. So I'm super excited for that. And I would just say, you know, for anyone that's listening to this podcast, um, people always ask me, they're like, you know, how did you not give up hope? That's pretty much, I would say, the main question that I get. And I would just say believe in yourself and keep going, even if it's like the worst week of your life, or even if it's like the hardest day or whatever it is. If you could hold on for just a little bit, things will turn around. So it's like, just if you could hold on and just keep going, things eventually work out. So I would say keep
Uh,
going.
keep with that belief, keep with that hope. Yeah, 100%. What was really good and really powerful about what you explained there is that you learned from your past relationship. And, I always find that relationships, jobs, life itself is there to teach us lessons. So when we take the lessons from that past relationship, that you wasn't really valuing yourself within that relationship, what you was tolerating wasn't right, and you started to learn from that, then we can really create that as a hope and create the better relationship that comes into our life. However, we repeat the same pattern, we're going to get stuck doing the same thing and get the same outcomes. So the fact that you learn from that is such a key thing to creating that next level of life and relationships. Yes. So I do actually have one more question. I put it out to some viewers, and a lot of other questions I was asking was people on my Instagram. They were like commenting what to ask you. But one question was, what was the key to the attraction with Niraj?
The key to the attraction, I will tell you. So Neeraj is very different from the typical, guy that I dated in New York. So it was I dated like the finance type of like really aggressive sort of guys. And the thing with Neeraj is, so I'm not sure if, I don't think I talked about this on the show, but we texted for 2 months before we actually met in person. So we were, pen paling for a couple of months. And I think even in those interactions, and then when I met him in person, it kind of solidified this, but he never once in any of our interactions didn't let me shine. So like if I had an opinion, or if I, even if it was like something crazy, like I could tell him I want to go to the moon, and he was just extremely supportive. And then the thing, that was towards me, but the thing that I love about him is he has this childlike quality. He will like break out in a dance, or like, I don't know, he does like, very expressive things with his movement. And so he hasn't lost that, and he doesn't really care who's watching. He's so true and authentic to himself, and he has that childlike quality that he carries into everything he does. And it makes everything light and fun and just beautiful. So I love that about him.
Oh, that's making my heart swell up the way you're describing him. It's such a beautiful thing because actually one of the main secure factors for male is actually being self-assured. And I always actually value it in three different ways. So I look at level one relationship, which is almost like the old traditional culture way, which is a masculine male and a submissive woman. And that can
Right.
never be you, right? So a macho guy, submissive woman. And that was the old culture way. It got us by within our tradition, but it wasn't really what we wanted. It wasn't fulfillment. Now we're actually at a level where women are earning as much as guys, if not more, and also guys are doing the same thing. So there's no need for each other. This is a level two relationship. So I don't really need you, but I'm in your life, and I don't need you either, but we're just together. This relationship's okay, but the compatibility is more like friendship.
Mhm.
It's because you could do everything I want to do, and I could do whatever you want to do. The third level of relationship is where a man can actually see the goddess and he can see her shine. He can see all of her strength and empower her, as well as let her know that she's protected and he's there for her to make her feel safe. And the woman, she's self assured, she knows her worth. However, she knows that she wants to allow a guy into her life. And it sounds like you both have that, which is incredible. All right.
Yeah, you summed it up better than I could put into words, but that is exactly it. Yeah. I mean, just kind of going back to the level one and the level two, I do think even though level one was old school, I think now that you're saying that, some of my old relationships in New York were a level one,
Yeah.
where I felt like, okay, I was dating this extremely masculine guy. And even though I wasn't submissive, I sort of fell into that role somehow, and it wasn't myself. So yeah, I think the level two is what we should all strive for.
Or level three, like you have. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're 100% right. And I could just imagine with the strength that you have as a woman, that it only takes a certain amount of time period for you to be level one until you need to break out. Because you could be sweet and pleasing and nice and submissive for a while, but then you're like, no, I know I deserve more than this. I know I'm more than this. And that inside voice probably made you break up with them. out the blue, you had a big argument. It was a full moon, and you're like, ah, this is it.
I know. I'm like, it's over. Every Mercury retrograde. I'm
Yeah.
like, lose.
It's because that inner you was strong enough. And I
Yeah.
wanted to really just say how proud I am of you. And I mean that in the most beautiful way because you were doing something which I believe is generational change. And that's
Mhm.
why you're on this pathway. And although your sister and your family members got married sooner and everything else, fine, but you're on something called a generational change, which means that you create a whole new way of being in relationships for the future. So hats off to you, and your future generation would be proud of the woman that you and Niraj is.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, let's wrap up there. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on Shital. Do you have any final words? Oh.
I just wanted to thank you, Sunny, because as much as I've been able to share parts of my story and my journey, I've learned a lot from you as well. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for being on. And I know you're going to be inspiring millions and millions of people across the world and young women and also relationships. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Looking forward to our event next year.
100%.